I was getting all these rumors that the president was going to be assassinated in Dallas. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it. He says, "Marty, you worry about me too much." 18 hours later, he was dead.
On November 22nd, 1963, Marty Underwood's greatest fear became a reality. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was assassinated.
Everybody that had anything to do with Dallas in any way, Kenny O'Donnell, all the Secret Service, they're practically all dead now. I just think people should know the truth.
November of '88 was the 25th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. So everybody in the world was doing these respectives and documentaries and whatnot. So here is the raw footage of one from Baltimore. This one has one guy who we will hear that knew Kennedy and knew the mob. And he thinks the mafia definitely had involvement in it.
We do stand on the edge of a great new era, filled with both crisis and opportunity. I have come to Texas today to salute an outstanding group of pioneers.
I'll never forget it as long as I live. It's haunted me for so many years. I was getting all these rumors that the president was going to be assassinated in Dallas. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it. He says, "Marty, you worry about me too much." 18 hours later, he was dead.
On November 22nd, 1963, Marty Underwood's greatest fear became a reality. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was assassinated.
Everybody that had anything to do with Dallas in any way, Kenny O'Donnell, all the Secret Service, they're practically all dead now. I just think people should know the truth.
Marty Underwood was an advance man to both Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. Preceding the president on nearly all of his trips, Marty was responsible for arranging everything, from room accommodations to crowd gatherings. Although Marty prepared Kennedy's trip to Houston on the 21st and made ready his supposed trip to Austin on the 23rd, it was Kenny O'Donnell who advanced JFK to Dallas, but Marty rode in the motorcade.
Dallas was probably the most bigoted city in the United States. He was very apprehensive, especially that last week. I couldn't help it. You just don't know how many people would say, and these are big people in Texas, would say, if he comes to Texas, please don't let him go to Dallas.
But Kennedy believed the trip was vital, both politically and personally.
This is the first time Jackie had ever gone on a political trip with him. He said she's never made a trip and she's looking forward to this, and that it was just, he was adamant about it.
His name is Lee Harvey Oswald, O-S-W-A-L-D.
Although history books tell us that Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy, Marty disagrees. After years of being sworn to secrecy, he feels it's time to speak out.
The two things I was asked most after I got out of the White House, was it the CIA or was it Hoover, or was it the mafia? Hoover was in it up to his neck. He had, on the 5th floor of the FBI building, 4 rooms full of files, blackmail files, on everybody that amounted to anything, whether it was the president or Martin Luther King. He was tied in with the CIA, and the CIA was in with the mafia on it.
So you think that the FBI and the CIA both knew?
I think they knew he was going to be hit, and I found out for sure because Win Scott, who was the head CIA of not only Mexico but Central America and Cuba, if they hadn't gotten him there, his number was up. It's just a matter of where they got him. They were thinking about if they missed him in Dallas of getting him on the ranch the next day.
Years later, Win Scott, who had knowledge of Castro and the mafia's dealings in the underground network, would also reveal information to Marty that would devastate President Johnson.
Johnson, all through the years, kept saying there's 2 cancers that are killing my presidency. One was Vietnam, the other was the fact that invariably every 6 months, one of the Inquirer or somebody come out. Lyndon Johnson was definitely part of the assassination. He said, I wonder if your friends south of the border would be able to clarify any of this. So I got down to Mexico City, and I hadn't gotten off the plane 2 feet, and a little Mexican tapped me on the shoulder, got me in a car, and drove me for about, I'd say, 10 minutes to an unlit house which was evidently a CIA house, probably completely, insulated. And I spent about 4 hours with Scott, and that's where I found out probably more about the assassination. And I said, well, do you feel that the president was involved? And he said, not in any way, none whatsoever. He said,
During Marty's conversation with Scott, the name of Chicago Mafia boss Sam Giancana surfaced over and over. Marty felt the need to confront Giancana face to face.
I wasn't close to Giancana, but I had a good speaking acquaintance. He liked me. And I told him right out, I said, I found out quite a few things, and I said, the president's very disturbed about these rumors coming out. And he said, well, he's very hot-headed. He said, you can go back and tell him, he said, that his number was up on the board too. And I said, come on. He said, no. He said, we don't want any more investigations. And he said, when Johnson put the Warren Commission in, we were tickled to death, and so was Hoover, because we knew it'd be a whitewash.
I think that's the prettiest picture of Jackie Kennedy I've ever seen.
He did, even Jackie. Yeah.
Today, Marty is more open to speaking of secret events that at one time were too dangerous to reveal. He feared not only for his life, but his son Marty Jr.'s as well. After 25 years, however, he still relishes the past through pictures and artifacts he has kept. Nestled deep within Marty's heart are bittersweet memories of a man America loved.
He wasn't a great president. Didn't have a chance to be.
Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. Either way, he doesn't look like he's lying. He looks like he's telling the truth as he knows it. But who knows?
The nation was shocked at the assassination of John Kennedy. In the days that followed, millions mourned him as they would have a member of their family. Throughout the grieving process, it was the tiniest member of the president's family who stood out in one of the most poignant moments of the funeral.
I just had a feeling that it was the photograph for the funeral, and it was going to be very memorable.
No one who saw the haunting image that photographer Stan Stearns captured that morning can ever forget the sight of young John Kennedy saluting the caisson bearing the body of his slain father.
I took out the longest telephoto lens I had, and I just watched Jackie's expressions. They walked out of the church. They started to play the national anthem. She whispered in the kid's ear. The hand went up, click, and the hand went down. That was it. It only just took seconds. So when it was over and the entourage started to go to Arlington Cemetery, I'm asking all these other 60 or 70 photographers, did you all see the salute? And they said, what salute? So I had the picture of the funeral.
Stan had taken literally thousands of shots in his 20 years as a press photographer covering the White House, but few have left an impression as vivid, even if it didn't really exemplify the courage we've all read into it. Was John just shading his eyes?
I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that unless Jackie puts it in some memoirs. Whether she told him to salute or he was shielding it from the sun, I don't know, and nobody knows.
We will also hear from another guy who wrote a book on the matter, who has some pretty interesting facts to back up his claim that yes, the mob was involved.
He was the 35th President of the United States, and while his time in office was not long, his youthful vigor and the strength of his ideas held a promise that inflamed the hopes of all Americans.
What you can do for your country.
If you're young at heart.
That spirited life and those innocent hopes were lost forever when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963. History books tell us that a crazed gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, was the killer. And in fact, at the time, that was the only explanation reasonable to a grieving country.
As he was waving back, the shot rang out and he slumped down in the seat.
25 years have erased a few memories of the assassination, but for some people it has raised questions. and for David Scheim, one dark and disturbing conclusion. John Kennedy was killed by the mafia.
My book squares totally with the conclusion of the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1979. They found that the murder of President Kennedy was a probable conspiracy and that the mafia had the motive, means, and opportunity to kill President Kennedy.
Now, it is important to know that David Scheim is just an ordinary citizen with a passion for the truth. He does not write bestsellers for a living. He is a mathematician working for the National Institute of Health.
Hi.
For the last 10 years, he has spent $80,000 of his own money researching government files relating to the assassination. With the help of paid graduate students like Kristen Goss, he has searched and cross-referenced. And in his book, Contract on America, The Mafia Murder of John F. Kennedy, he has pieced together some extraordinary facts to support his conclusion. For example, fact: JFK refused to pursue the overthrow of Castro. This meant permanent loss of gambling profits to the mafia. Fact: under the president, Robert Kennedy accomplished the most effective purge of the mob in history. In 1963, the mafia was on the run. Fact: according to testimony gathered by the House Select Committee in 1979, 3 leading members of the mafia stated their intention to eliminate John and Robert Kennedy. One of these leaders was Jimmy Hoffa. But why did the official government investigation, the Warren Commission, fail to come to the same conclusion?
This was really the charge of the Warren Commission. Wrap it up quickly, pin it on Oswald. That was really their job, and they did what was expected of them. There was never really an objective, careful investigation of the JFK murder until the late 1970s, when the House Select Committee re-examined the case and concluded it was a conspiracy with the mob the probable suspect.
It is well established that John Kennedy was not killed by a bullet from the gun of Lee Harvey Oswald, based upon his position behind the motorcade. And since he was the only captured assassin, the conspiracy could be covered up if he were also eliminated. Enter Jack Ruby. Fact: with extensive ties to the mob, Jack Ruby was seen by the Secret Service 5 times the day before the assassination, effectively stalking the president in Houston. Fact: he had always had ties to the 3 mafia leaders alleged to want the assassination, but in the months preceding November, Jack Ruby's phone records suggest daily contact with these same leaders. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out so well for Jack Ruby.
Ruby expected that his alibi of a rash, spur-of-the-moment action would be believed, that he'd get off for second-degree murder, spend a couple of years in jail, acclaimed as a public hero, and then go free. It's only after his first-degree murder conviction that Ruby asks to testify and begins making these amazing hints of conspiracy and mob involvement.
In fact, just days before his death, Jack Ruby spoke to television newsmen on 2 occasions and made it quite clear that he was involved in a conspiracy. But 25 years later, is there much point in reconstructing the events of this tragic loss? For David Scheim, the answer is obvious.
I think it's important in an age where we perhaps some cynical values, we see a lot of people out to make money or for personal gain, that we know that President Kennedy was a hero. When he became president, he appointed his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who went after the mob with full force. Kennedy fully supported this crusade. It was of no benefit, and it ultimately cost President Kennedy his life. I think it's important to know that whatever Kennedy's faults were, he was a hero. He died a hero.
Well, there you have it. I don't know what to think. Me, always kind of thought that Oswald was just a crackpot who got lucky and did the impossible with those shots. No conspiracy, no big hula, just a crazy nut bar. But, it's everything from Cuba to aliens to Russia, to, his own family. No matter what happened, he lost a dad, his wife lost a husband. I mean, that's bad enough that America had a president assassinated in more modern times. Just kind of weird. But here it is. I hope your day's blessed.